around her because it did ping and it went off and you got
Behind the cover, yeah.
this member decapitated. It's probably because you're trying to hide something and make sure certain details don't come out.
Tend to Life with Elise starts right now.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Do me a quick favor. I'm on my laptop today and I haven't used my AirPods and this is a mic and forever. So if you guys can just let me know if you can hear me, okay, that would be fantastic. And I just appreciate it. We're in the middle of getting everything else tech-wise set up. And so I am using my laptop, which I feel like I haven't used in literally forever. So, okay, good. I see one yes so far, so just let me know. Perfect. Okay, good. You guys can hear me. If you have any issues or with visuals or hearing me as we go, please let me know. So as we allow for just a couple of minutes for some more people to filter in here who are just catching the reminder, let me just introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Elise, and this is Tend to Life, where we really just talk everything true crime. I feel like it's like a true crime community channel. We all talk through these things together. So if you are brand new and stopping by for the first time, I hope you enjoy today's video and some of the dialogue that goes on in these live streams with the viewers and myself. And if you do, and you feel like this is a channel that you want to support and want to come back and watch, hit that subscribe button. And for all of you who are returning subscribers, welcome back. And thank you guys so much for not only your support in general with the channel, but with this case particularly. If you've been following along for a while now, you know that we have been talking about this case for quite some time, since it really first happened. And in the beginning, something just did not sit right. And like many of you guys, I know also agreed and sit with. And so I was trying to do a deep dive and my sleuthing, borderline harassing some people to try to get some answers, but ended up talking to the loan officer who sold them their house, the home inspector, friends, the realtor, everyone I could possibly think to contact, because I was trying to narrow in a timeline, because we all just knew that something wasn't really right here in this case. And it's taking me a few days to digest everything, and so I appreciate you guys being so patient. And although I wish that I could say it was a surprising outcome, I think we all knew that this was what was coming. And it doesn't make it any easier, though. And I was hoping that this would be one of the cases in which I was proven wrong, and I'm sure you guys wish that you were proven wrong too with our gut instincts, but we weren't. And it just goes to prove again how much evil there really is in this world. Sorry, guys. Oh my God, sorry. So today we're going to go through all of the updates, not only the information that I'm sure you guys have all heard, but some of the newer information that has also come out today. And we're going to piece together some of the holes and some of the gaps that we are still trying to gather information for. And I know many of you, before we jumped on here, had said you hadn't had a chance to read the indictment yourselves yet. So I have that, and I will pull that up on the screen as well to go through with you. We'll go over it briefly. We'll talk more about it rather than just reading it verbatim, because I'm sure a lot of you guys have already read it, and it isn't an easy read. But let's just, I guess, kind of kickstart this. I was going to do a pre-recorded video, but I felt like it made more sense to come on here and go live with you guys, just because, again, I feel like as a community, we've kind of all been following this case closely together, and it felt like it was something that needed to be a little bit more personal and engaged with you guys, and that's just how I feel. So that's why this isn't extremely well formatted like other videos, but I appreciate you guys bearing with me nonetheless. So as most of you guys know by now, Jackie and Trezell West have been charged with the murder of their two adopted sons, Orrin and Orson, among a few other charges as well. They were indicted by a grand jury on March 1st, just a couple of days ago, and they were arrested around 7 p.m. that evening after being pulled over in their Winnebago. Now, it has not been confirmed by law enforcement officially yet, but it has been rumored that they were in disguise when they were pulled over, that they were trying to evade police, and that they were tipped off by a family member, but ultimately they were pulled over in that Winnebago and they were arrested. They were then booked shortly after, around 8 p.m., into the Kern County Jail. So we have the indictment that outlines all of the charges. I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about those charges and what it means for California law here particularly, because I'm obviously here in California. And they also had a hearing this morning where they entered their pleas, not guilty pleas, which I don't think we're surprised that that's what they are saying, but it's still kind of a kick to the gut nonetheless. And we're slowly starting to get more information. So let's discuss everything that we know so far. To just kick it back a little bit, to give everybody a brief synopsis of the case, the boys were given the names Sincere and Classic at birth. And the biological parents had lost custody back in, I believe it was 2018, due to a suspicious leg injury on one of the children, which relatives insist was an accident and it was not inflicted. The details surrounding that are still a little bit, unverified and unclear. But in any event, the West ended up bringing the kids in, adopting them, and renaming them Orrin and Orson West. They were living in Bakersfield at the time, and then they moved to Cal City in September. They already had 4 other children, bringing this total count to 6 kids. 2 of them were biological, and 2 of the others were also adopted. So in September 2020, the family moves from Bakersfield to Cal City. Now, this move was odd in general, and it struck me as odd in the beginning because, again, I'm very familiar with the area. I grew up here in California. Bakersfield is more of a populated city, while Cal City is a bit more desolate, more isolated. And one of the first questions that I had asked Giselle's friend, who had helped him with this house and helped him get the loan and ended up loaning him some of her personal money to make the move happen, was why Cal City? And she says that his statement to her was because he wanted to get off the grid, which now we see is a very interesting choice of words, as was it back then when we first heard it. And as I mentioned, when the case first broke, I did a deep dive trying to put together a sharper timeline to figure out what was true and what wasn't, because as many suspected, we didn't think that the boys ever made it to Cal City when that move took place. And so I wanted to see if it was true. I wanted to talk to the loan officer, the home inspector, to talk to the movers, get a hold of them to say, did they move bunk beds? Did they set up the rooms? Were they furnished to actually house 6 children, whether they were sharing rooms, whatever it was? Did any of their belongings make it from Bakersfield to Cal City? Trying to just piece together all the information that we could. The biggest glaringly obvious red flag through all of this was that everybody who I spoke to, who knew Giselle personally, said that they never saw any of the children, but especially never had seen the 2 boys. A comment that Giselle had made that was even more alarming was in July of 2020, prior to closing on the house, when he said he had 4 kids, not 6. And that's something we talked a lot about on this channel. And if you want to go through those deep dives, you're more than welcome to go back on this playlist and get caught up with all of that. But that was one of the biggest red flags that we initially had heard. At the time, there was suspicion that maybe he was talking about just the difference between the fostered, the adopted, the biological kids. But in any event, if you've got 6 kids, you've got 6 kids. And he had said in July that he had 4. Could that mean that he had planned something or was in the process of planning something? Now, in hindsight, possibly. We don't really know, because all we do know is that they're putting the time of death for these 2 boys between September 1st of 2020 and September 30th of 2020. Another piece of information that stuck out was that the neighbors in Cal City after the move said that they never saw any kids, never in the backyards, never playing, never making any noise. And that was really at the height of the pandemic. And so you would think that children would be outside in the backyard, at least, of their own home to stretch, to get fresh air, to not be locked up inside. And no neighbors ever saw any kids. And that was one of the very, very many red flags. Another extremely important piece of information was when the photos surfaced, when the boys were reported as missing, and when it felt like everybody was searching for these boys. We were very limited on what photographs to use, whether it be for flyers, for billboards, for social media posts, for whatever. because the last known photo that had ever been taken of the boys was from Thanksgiving 2019, almost a year earlier. That, of course, stands out as an issue because as a parent, I'm sure many of you parents will agree with me, you've got a lot more recent photos than something that's over a year old. So had something happened was the question prior to that. Did they just not care about the kids enough to take photos or document the memories? A million different questions that were raised from that. But most importantly, as a parent, what adopted, biological, doesn't matter. As a parent, as a caretaker, when you're putting together a missing persons flyer, you want the most recent photo of the children to be on there so that people can identify them. And they didn't have something except from November of 2019. So again, lots of tells along the way, right? A lot of red flags, a lot of things that stood out. And when we look back, it's just, we already felt like we knew it was so obvious at the time, right? But now we look back and we're like, wow, the writing really was on the wall there. So now we know that timeline of the murder for these two young boys, these two brothers, was between September 1st and September 30th. And this aligns with when they made that move to Cal City to get off the grid, as Trezell had so infamously spoke. So what happened in those 30 days? What could have happened in those 30 days? And what I want to do with you first is review the charges because it gives us a little bit more clarity and also raises some questions as to who may have helped them commit or clean up these crimes, who they persuaded, forced, or induced into helping them. Because we do see that they did persuade somebody to help, and we do know that there was a minor involved, and your mind can just go to the darkest of places when you hear that. So let's start, and I'm going to pull up the indictment, and again, I'm not going to go over it all verbatim for you guys. You can pause it and read it if you would like, but I am going to summarize it while we're here and talking about it before we get into the hearing today and some other details. So as I pull this up on the screen, both Jackie and Trezell were charged with 5 things, and the DA's office had asked the grand jury to convene for the hearing of this evidence back in December of 2021. The hearing lasted approximately 3 months, and it included, I guess I can pull this down for now, it included over 50 witnesses giving testimony. Now, these witnesses haven't been 100% confirmed, but I think it's safe to assume that it included family member, friends, law enforcement, public service members, all of these things. During the hearing, they heard a mixture of circumstantial evidence as well as direct evidence. And then ultimately, the grand jury returned a true bill. And what a true bill is it basically means that they made the decision to indict. So because of this, they will not have a preliminary hearing due to the indictment, and they will proceed straight to trial. And a trial date has been set. However, I believe that it is going to be postponed, and I will explain why here in a minute. And we also know at this point that they have not found the bodies of the 2 boys. There has been speculation back in November. There were human remains that were found. I believe it was confirmed that it was not the boys at the time, but now I'm hearing mixed things that maybe it hasn't been confirmed. But as of now, they have not formally announced that they have discovered any remains of the 2 boys. So this will be a no-body murder trial, which does happen from time to time. And if they have enough evidence that they believe not only is enough to charge them, but enough to convict them, they don't necessarily need the bodies. We also know that other children were taken early on by CPS, and they are now in productive custody, as they have been for over a year now. And so let's go through each individual charge and what those exactly mean here. So count 1 and count 2 are both second-degree murder charges, one for each boy. And the indictment states that on or about September 1st, 2020 through September 30th of 2020, Trezell and Jackie West did with malice a forethought murder, Orrin West, a human being. The second count is, of course, the same, but it is in regards to Orson West. And now a forethought murder means premeditated. It means deliberate and planned, which is one of the worst parts about this, the fact that this 3 and 4-year-old boy, this was planned. I should say was planned for at least one of them. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute here as well. Along with the second-degree murder charges, there are a slew of circumstance of aggravation charges that roll into it. Now, aggravation charges and aggravation charges in California can range from circumstances that fall into 12 different buckets. And these buckets can really vary from having a weapon, from threatening witnesses, from planning the murder, the sophistication of the crime and the murder, to having contraband, all sorts of things. And their aggravation charges are very, very pointed. So we'll go over those really quickly. Let me just open this up a bit further. So we start with the first circumstance in aggravation, and it says that they had committed a crime that involved great violence, threat of great bodily harm, or other acts disclosing a high degree of cruelty, viciousness, or callousness. Going into the next circumstance of aggravation, it talks about how Orrin West was particularly vulnerable within the meaning of California rules of court. And this just goes to his state as far as age and victimology. Going into the next circumstance in aggravation, it says it further alleges that the defendants Trezell and Jackie induced others to participate in the commission of the crime or occupied a position of leadership or dominance of other participants in its commission within the meaning of California rules of court. And once we get to another one, it does call out a minor particularly. But right here, it's saying that they used their position of authority, of leadership, possibly of being a parent and being in a position of trust to bring others in to participate. Now, does that necessarily mean participation in the crime itself? Not necessarily. It could also mean participation in the cleanup, as horrifying as that is to think about. And then if you go into the next circumstance in aggravation, it again says a position of trust or confidence to commit that offense. Again, their role as far as how they would as far as how they would persuade or induce these others to help out. So now as we go and we see that this is the second page here, and this is where we go into the other counts, and it really just outlines similarly what the same ones were for count one. But what I want to call out is that where it shows that and says threat of great bodily harm or other acts disclosing a high degree of cruelty, viciousness, or callousness. Now in California and other states as well, this often does mean that a weapon was included. Not always, but sometimes. Now, aggravating a standard crime occurs when you're inducing or coercing a minor to participate in the crime, or if you are threatening witnesses. So we're going to come back to that because there has been talk not only of them bringing a minor into this, but also there has been talk about who they exactly may have threatened and a family member. So under the charge for Orrin, it also states that it is further alleged the defendants induced a minor to commit or assist in the commission of this crime. So this has led a lot of public speculation and a lot of conversation to lead people to believe that they had their children participating in this. Again, maybe not the crime itself, but the cover-up and the cleanup, which I believe would make more sense than them participating in the crime itself. And I only say that because it says that the crime was strategically, thoughtfully planned, that this was premeditated. I think it would be challenging, although not impossible. I think it would be challenging to get young children involved early on in the planning stages of something, whereas possibly getting them to then help with the cleanup or the cover up and the lie seems like it may be more likely. And that does definitely fall under that bucket of the aggravation charges. Then as we go into more of these, it talks again about the position of leadership or dominance, and I think that just again alleges back to their role as a parent, and it talks about sophistication. So in regards to threatening, I'll pull this down really quick. In regards to threatening of the witnesses, it is being said, not 100% confirmed, but I have heard on very good authority, and once I have the exact confirmed details, I will of course let you know, but it's being said that a family member may have had and one of them may have had another family member anonymously jumped recently back in 2021, towards the end of 2021, and that this was done and set up in an effort to silence this family member, to scare this family member into silence. But it ultimately resulted in a tip to the police. And so again, we're waiting on more details to confirm that. And once I have that, I'll let you know, and I will let you know exactly who those family members in play were. But it appears that this may run a little bit deeper here. So count 3 and 4 are child abuse charges, 1 for each of the young boys. And the last count is, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, is falsely reporting an emergency. Now, this count obviously comes from the fact that they called in the boys as missing, when in fact, the boys were not missing. They had been dead at that point for approximately 3 months, and they knew that. They knew exactly what happened. They knew exactly where they were. They knew exactly that they were not coming home, yet they falsely reported this as a disappearance. They used resources, finances, everything to do these, huge search efforts and search parties to bring these boys home, all while they knew they were never coming home. And while they haven't admitted to anything yet and they pled not guilty, it is my belief that Jackie will talk, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second here. I don't want to jump around too far, but we'll get there. So if you recall, one of the main topics on this channel as we were doing all of our research was Trezel's search the night that the boys went missing, or disappeared, I should say. Because he goes off and he searches the neighborhood. And then we show the footage on here, we talk through all of it, and we see the timestamps. It's timestamps. And he searched for approximately 6 minutes. Pretty solid search, right? Then when he comes back to the house, he waits and stands outside by the tree for 13 minutes, almost double the amount of time that he actually searched for his 2 missing toddlers. And that stood out right away, because every parent knows I search longer for literally a piece of gum in the bottom of my purse when I'm looking for something. If my son or daughter went missing, as I'm sure many of you parents can agree, you are hitting the pavement and not stopping after 6 minutes. Don't care what you say. And so he returns home and he stands at this tree for 13 minutes. But what he doesn't do is he doesn't go inside once. He doesn't go inside once to tell Jackie that he didn't find the boys, nor does Jackie ever come outside once to tell him that she didn't find the boys. In fact, Jackie never left the house for 40 minutes. And that's something we had talked about a lot on this channel. And there were a few conflicting views, because some people had said that maybe they were communicating via cell phone while he was searching. I don't buy it. And I'm going to explain why here too. Well, not that it matters necessarily here in hindsight, because we know they're both guilty, or allegedly guilty, I should say. But one of the main things was he doesn't go inside when he comes back from the search to tell her, I didn't find the boys, call the police. Yet he tells us in that interview that he told her, call the police. We never see them communicate. So many people had commented saying he may have texted her, he may have called her. No. Why would he have ever, if he had a cell phone with him, why wouldn't he have just called the police himself? Why would he instruct her to call the police? And again, Jackie never left that house for 40 minutes, which we saw. Not to check the front yard, not to check the backyard, not to talk to neighbors, nothing. Probably because she knew that there was nothing to look for. Obviously, now we know that that was true. So how would they have both known that if they weren't communicating, that the boys hadn't been found? And also, more than that, she never goes out to him to say she's called the police, to say they're on their way, to have any sort of communication at all. So how would she have known to call the police unless, the story was manufactured, which I suspected from the get-go it was, as did many of you, and we now know is the case. It was all a manufactured story, and a really shitty job on their part as far as figuring out how to cover this up. But now also, let's talk about that infamous interview, because there were red flags flying all over the place in that interview. And some of the biggest takeaways from that were when Trezel had said, they are rambunctious. And then he gets mad at himself and he grunts very heavily at himself because it's almost as though he messed up his story. And I'm sure many of you guys remember that. It's on my channel if you haven't seen it. But he says, they're going to be rambunctious. And then he gets mad at himself for saying that. Almost as though that could have been a reason for whatever happened to them because they were rambunctious toddler boys. I've got an almost 3-year-old. I know how wild they can be. Never wild enough to do something like that. But you can clearly see in this interview that he gets mad at himself for slipping there. Another thing that they had said that raised a red flag that we all talked about was they said, they're going to be here. They're going to be here. And my initial thought that I had shared with you too with that was that as a parent, if your child is missing or 2 children are missing, you're never going to want to pinpoint the search to a specific area. You would say they could be anywhere, cast a wide net, search everywhere. But the fact that they were saying they're going to be here, they're going to be here, then it just makes me believe even more so now, looking back again, that it's because they probably were somewhere closer to Bakersfield or high desert on the way to Vegas even. Still very likely. And they wanted that search to happen in Cal City because they knew the boys never touched ground in Cal City, that they never were there. So that's where they wanted. With Jackie, she had said as she was talking, which she didn't say much, when she did, she was a little skittish. And you could chalk it up to nerves, a grieving mother, maybe. I don't even want to call her a mother, but you could chalk it up to that. But there was something else that was off. And if you remember, there was one thing that she had said when she was like, we went out in the yard, and she like drug that sentence, the yard, really shaky, and like didn't really say a sentence with that, as though she was trying to remember the pieces of what that story was. And that's something we talked a lot about on here. It felt very scripted, very rehearsed. Lastly, one of the biggest pieces of information that stood out that didn't align, which you would think would have been enough to, not enough to charge them, but enough to realize that they were involved, obviously, was what had happened on December 19th, just a couple of days before they had reported the boys as missing. If you remember, they were seen getting into their van with 4 kids, not 6. Later, they had said it was because they went to go Christmas shopping. But if they were going Christmas shopping with the 4 kids, why would they leave a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old behind? Now, I had suspected and still do that this is when they had dropped the other 4 children off at the grandparents' house for that vacation. But again, why not take the 3 and 4-year-old with them? And if 6 children was too many for the grandparents to babysit, totally get that. But then you wouldn't leave those 2 children by themselves at home to fend for themselves, obviously. So nothing within that story made sense either. Nothing aligned. It just didn't make sense. It was my thought that something had already happened to them and that they were taking the other 4 children to the grandparents' house so that they could concoct their story and then execute their plan 2 days later to report them as missing and to say that they had disappeared. One of the very first things that we mentioned in one of the lives that we talked about was why that day? If they killed the boys back in September, why wait 3 months? And why wait a few days before Christmas to report them as missing? My gut in the very beginning, and I wavered on it a little bit as months went on, but now it goes right back to that. My gut instinct from the beginning was the reason that they waited until, the 21st of December? I think it was the 21st of December, was because I think that in their minds, they thought that everybody, meaning the public, would be so consumed and polarized by the holidays, New Year's Eve. It's always kind of, a whirlwind around that time, that last week of December. It always flies by. There's so many things going all the time. It was my belief that they strategically waited until that time because they wouldn't have to answer questions necessarily about things because the public would be so consumed with other stuff that they wouldn't think that the eyes and the mass attention would be brought onto it. I think also that they would probably at that point have to explain to some family members why the boys weren't showing up for Christmas, for the holidays. And so they had no choice but to now vocalize that something had happened. And I think there were a lot of components that went into it. Little did they know, if that is the reason, maybe they never heard of John Bonet because that happened at Christmas and we all know how many eyes got on that case. So there was definitely, in my opinion, a strategy there as far as why they waited 3 months. Not only to get the story straight, to dispose of evidence, to clean things up. That wouldn't take 3 months. It wouldn't take 3 months. There was a different reason, in my opinion, at least, behind it. So in terms of conviction and sentencing, the murder charges each carry a sentence of 15 years to life if convicted. We know that there are obviously 2 charges, one for each boy. So that carries 30 years to life for each of them. The child abuse charges also carry a penalty of up to 6 years for each of those charges. So it is safe to say that they are going to be spending, if not the rest of their lives in prison, the majority of their lives in prison. Today in the hearing, they entered their pleas of not guilty. Luckily, they were deemed a flight risk, and so they were not granted bail. Thank God. The prosecutor also had filed a motion for reports to be sealed and for a gag order to be issued so that no evidence can be discussed by witnesses, by investigators, or by attorneys. And the motion on the gag order is set for next week. We saw similar things like this in the Morphew case, I believe it was, where just because, again, they don't want to jeopardize the integrity of the investigation, they don't want it publicly acknowledged what the evidence is, what the discovery is. But what's interesting is a trial date has already been set for May 23rd. However, it's likely going to be postponed because defense attorneys still have not been assigned to Trezell and Jackie. And the defense attorney still has to get up to speed on the discovery, everything that the state has with as far as what the prosecution plans to bring. There's going to be mountains of evidence to go through that 2.5 months doesn't seem like a likely timeline. So I wouldn't be surprised if this trial ends up getting pushed out further. Now, personally, because I'm not far from Bakersfield, I'm a couple hours, I'm not far, I'm going to do everything I can to see if I can get my ass in that courtroom and see their faces up close and personal, report literally in real time what's going on. We'll see how closed off the trial is, but I'm going to try to swing whatever I can. And as if we can pull that off, guys, I will let you know, and I will be updating with you in real time 100%. So with this, now that bail is off the table and they are being held indefinitely, let's circle back to Jackie. I think that she is going to be the one to talk. Now, a lot of people are saying if they haven't flipped on each other yet, they won't flip on each other. I don't think it's going to be her flipping on Trezell to catch a deal necessarily. Possibly. Maybe to lessen her sentence. Who knows? I think that she is going to talk because I think she now knows that there is no way she's going to be able to flee. She's not going to be out on bail. She's not going to be able to run. She's stuck. We all know what happens to child abusers in the system and in prison and in jail. And I think that she is going to become emotionally broken down. I think the detectives are going to work on her. I think the inmates are going to work on her. I think she is going to break. And I say that because of her behavior in that first interview and her body language. He seemed like he was the one who was spearheading everything, the decision maker. Not to say that she's not guilty and not to say she didn't equally have a hand in this. 1000% she did. What I mean by that is that I don't know that she's got the backbone and the strength that Trezell necessarily does, or maybe even the narcissistic tendencies, who knows. So I think that she's going to emotionally break before he does. And I'm hopeful that she shares not only what happened and why it happened, but I'm more hopeful that she shares the location and where the boys' remains are so they can at least finally now be laid to rest and they can, their souls can just be at peace. The biological family can hopefully get some peace. I hate the word closure because there's no way to even get closure in a situation like this. But I'm hopeful that she talks and breaks down a little bit and shares. It's the tiniest little thread that gets pulled. The whole thing can unravel. So I'm hopeful that that happens. And I'm confident that it will. I think that she probably wouldn't, and this is just my opinion again, I don't think that she necessarily would have had the opportunity to flip on him over the last year just because she has been in his presence, isolated with him, locked up in a house, and then a Winnebago with him. God, it reminds me of another case. locked up with him to where she may not have had that opportunity to share, but now that she is completely isolated away from him, and I'm not saying that it's because she's not under a spell. I don't think she is a victim in this by any means. To a degree, who knows? Maybe she was, but I don't think she is in this regard. But I think that now that she's away from him, it's going to start eating at her, the pressure of all of the investigators, the detectives, all the information, and I think she's going to spill or she's going to slip. And we're just going to have to wait and see with that. So law enforcement has also said that there are additional suspects. So I'm curious if more family members are about to be arrested. I'm wondering who else may have helped cover this up, who else may have obstructed in this, who else knew that something was going on, and what arrests are going to come, because I can't imagine that it's just going to end here either. I think that this runs much deeper, especially if that tip turns out to be true, that they had another family member anonymously jumped to try to scare them into silence. That means that more people knew the truth. I also have been told that it is a high possibility that one of the kids has shared information. Again, they are minors, so it can't be confirmed. It hasn't been said, but again, I think that we will learn more. Sorry, I'm just now popping over to the comments. And Carrie, let me just address this really quick. Is it true that the other siblings were made to kill them? No. It has not been confirmed that that was the rule. Yes, in the indictment, it was outlined and stated that they induced others and a minor, which would lead you to believe one of the siblings, if not multiple siblings, to help with the crime. But that could also be in relation to the cleanup or the cover-up, meaning lying to police, meaning hiding evidence, things like that. It doesn't necessarily mean that they forced their kids to do something. But what I do think is interesting, and let me see if I can find it up on here. There was something in that indictment that stuck out to me as well. It was, where was it? Hold on, let me find it here, guys. So the aggregation charges, 1 second, I'm gonna find this. Oh yeah. So under the count for Orson's murder, it states that the manner of the crime was carried out. The manner of the crime was carried out indicated planning, sophistication, or professionalism. However, that detail is not included anywhere in the count for Orrin. So this makes me believe that they did plan, and we now know it is premeditated, it was planned, to kill Orson. And for whatever reason, I think they then decided after the fact that they also needed to silence Orrin, and they added him to their hit list, whether it was to silence him because they were worried he would talk, whether it was because it was a red flag that the two boys weren't going to be together and that would raise suspicion, whatever it may have been. It's very interesting that that wording is different in the two counts when they are almost completely identical otherwise. And if, again, just going back to the premeditation, what reason on earth could you possibly have for planning to kill your toddler son? Boys who you adopted, you were saying, I want to be these boys' caretaker because they can't be with their biological family right now. You wanted to take on that role and responsibility. And then in just a couple years later, you are viciously murdering them and then making up this false grandiose story about them playing with chalk, whether it's the fucking drawing chalk, the dog, whatever the hell the story was that made absolutely no sense. It's just awful. I see somebody's talking about the bonfire. Yes, there was a fire at the house, family members' houses. And it's just, I believe in my gut, it's running much deeper than we know. And I don't know, guys. I feel like we're still going to learn a lot. We're going to learn a lot here, and it's going to be really uncomfortable, is my guess. Sorry. Anyways, let me go over here to the comments for a second. Let me go over here to the comments in just a second. Some people are saying that possibly they had to kill the other one after the kids brutalized the other, that the kids may have done it. Tracy, oh God, I really hope this isn't the case. They chose them. Okay, let me go over to some of your comments, guys. Let's see. Infamous truth teller, it also says that they coerced, or I guess I mistrust something about a minor. So what Judy Ron is saying is that basically they had their biological older children commit the act. Yes, I've seen, I didn't watch the Judy Ron video from yesterday. I should text him actually and ask him. I should ask him if he wants to come on here, huh? But if you read the statute, it can be both. It could be, yes, that they had the siblings commit the act, or that they helped with the crime itself, being the whole crime, not only the murder itself, but also the cover up, everything. So it very well could be that. I just want to be very careful to jump to that speculation and conclusion when there is an alternative, just because I know it is the one that people, it has the most shock value, unfortunately. And so I think that's the one that a lot of people are going to grab onto, but it hasn't necessarily been confirmed that that is what happened. So I just want us to be very, very careful with pushing that narrative out. I heard that Trezelle's brother may have helped commit the crimes, but I also heard that the children wouldn't talk for a while because of being threatened by their parents, but it makes sense now. Yes. Carol, I'm going to go back and watch this. It is implied, yes, that they had a role, but again, I want us to just be very, very careful here, because unless they are true sociopathic monsters, which to some degree I do think they are, how do you force even if it is an older child to commit that, unless you know the nature of the crime, and if they don't have the body, unless the kids spoke, how do they know what the cause of death was, and how did they force the children to do that? There's a lot of pieces that roll into it. So I just want us to, tread lightly here until it's confirmed. Yeah, I think you should try to get a hold of Judy Ron, because it was so insightful the way he had the person that was a lawyer read it. Absolutely. I can text him. You know what? Actually, hold on. Hold, please. I'll text him right now. I don't know if he's available, but I'll see if he wants to jump on. Hold on. I'm just going to text him really quick. Okay. Let's see. Okay, we'll wait for him to text back. Let me go back over here to the comments. Oh, that's an interesting theory. I think they took them in for money to buy the house. There was a question earlier too about why they haven't been charged with fraud yet, if they were still collecting money on the missing boys. I don't know if they were in fact collecting money. I'm assuming that question came up because of Kayla Montgomery and everything going on in that case. So, I don't know. Maybe those charges will come, but I haven't heard anything otherwise. Yes, Tracy. This is what I mean too. It could be that the kids witnessed it and then they threaten them to, and withholding the information is a crime. There's a lot of different variables here, and that's why, again, I just want to be, very, very careful. So it wasn't the realtor. Let me go back here. Yes, so I talked to the realtor, but it was the loan officer, and I can reach out to her too, actually. She had shared with me all of their conversations, and yes, they had a lot of conspiracy theory conversations, a lot of spiritual conversations, a lot of Pizzagate conversations, but nothing that she had said at the time stood out as a red flag, minus when he said he only had 4 kids rather than the 6. And yes, if you guys are looking for more coverage on this too, AV Watchman has been fantastic. Got to give credit where credit's due, guys. It's all a community, right? Got to just support each other. Thank you so much, Tina. I appreciate the super chat and the support. Not first degree because I don't think that the 2 of them actually did it. I think they forced the children to beat and abuse them. For what reason, though? I don't know, guys. I don't know. And like I'm trying in my mind, sorry, I mean, I know I'm like staring off into space right now. I'm replaying the interview in my mind. I'm replaying the story in their mind. They took the 4 kids to the grandparents' house on December 19th and said they went Christmas shopping. I don't know. I think they are more involved than that. Yes, the trial is going to be full of sadness, 100%. And you're right. So you're absolutely right. Some people absolutely do just get either sick and they're twisted and they get a kick out of these things. And that could be what they're into. I don't know. You know what? I've been wrong before and I could be wrong again. That's just not where this is pulling me for some reason. But let me know what you guys all think in the comments, because I'm curious to know what you guys all think. I don't know. Let's see. Sorry, guys, this chat's going fast. I'm going to. Shell, this is something that other people had mentioned too. Shell saying maybe abuse happened to one of the boys and he passed, and then the other boy was a witness, so they had to kill him too. Absolutely. And it could have been that the abuse went too far with Orson, and then they had to, again, get rid of Orrin as well, because not only was he maybe a witness, but because how do they explain away the 2 brothers? There's some sort of synergy there. And obviously there is a lot of evidence. If they feel like they can get a conviction on all of these charges, especially with no body, they have a mountain of evidence. So we are going to learn a lot. Absolutely. Let's see here. I'm going to give Ron a couple more minutes. They have not found the boys yet. So they did find human remains. I believe it was back in November, but I think it had already been ruled out that it wasn't them. I'm almost positive. And months ago. I'm almost positive it was ruled that it wasn't them. But yes, they said that they still don't know where the boys are. Diana, seriously, thank you, Annie, Judy, Ron, Bill, and Phil from Off the Cuff for never letting these boys' names be forgotten. Thank you, Diana. I appreciate that. Tracy, can you reread what was written involving minors? Yeah, let me pull it up. He's having dinner with his family right now, guys. Just tell him. Okay, hold on, let me take this off. Okay, hold on, let me find the one with the minors. Gosh, this laptop is so small, it's so hard to read. Sorry, guys, let me find. Sorry if I'm missing it, and if you guys are already seeing it, I can't see which page it's on. Oh, page, okay. That's page 4. Page 2, wait, where'd page 3 go? Oh my gosh, what the heck happened? Hold on. Well, that's interesting. Hold on, where did page 3 go? Sorry guys, hold on, let me just load this in really quick. I need to go back to like learn how to use a freaking computer school or something. Okay, hold on one second, guys. Enter. Let me just, God, I'm like trying to like get around my laptop so I can see my actual PC. Okay. Sorry, muted me. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to do everything on my big computer and it's like not letting me. Okay, hold on, let me find what page it is. I know, guys, sorry, I'm like losing my mind right now. Okay, hold on, let me find it. Page 5. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Why did that take me so long? Sorry. So right here it says, it is further alleged that the defendant, Trezell and Jackie West, induced a minor to commit or assist in the commission of the crime within the meaning of California rules of court. So let me just pull this other thing up for you guys. Pull this off, and I'm going to pull this up for you because I'm going to read you guys part of the California code. Okay, let me pull this up for you guys. So, sorry. Okay, so let me set this straight here, guys. So when it is, and let me pull this back up here for you on page 5. So it says that Trezell and Jackie induced a minor to commit or assist in the commission of the crime, which a commission of a crime is committing an act or failing to act when the person clearly knows or should have known that whatever action or omission was illegal. So this could, again, very well mean that they omitted the truth and what they knew or what they saw. It does not mean that they necessarily were hands-on and forced their children to execute the crime itself. It means that they induce them to participate within the entire commission of the crime, the omission, the obstruction, maybe the cleanup, maybe the crime itself. So while I get that this is the shock value headline that everybody is running with, I think we all need to be very, very careful to start spewing and running with that narrative. I just think that it could, maybe that will be proven, and maybe we will learn very quickly from law enforcement that that is in fact what happened. But I think that until that is vocalized and confirmed, it can mean a few different things, and I just want us to be sensitive to that. Okay, let me go back over here. The indictment details are already released, so I pulled that up earlier on here, and you can take a look. Yeah, Diane, it absolutely could have been making them lie due to, well, it could be making them lie due to being forced. It could be making them lie as far as when they last saw the boys. It could be making them lie if they knew where the boys were disposed of, or lie that they ever made it to Cal City. I mean, it could be an entire slew of things within this. So rather than jumping right to they forced the siblings to kill their other siblings, I think that's a very dangerous path to go down, especially if it is not the truth. And once these siblings are older and it follows them throughout their entire lives, like, I think we just need to be very careful with a lot of the rumors. But I get it. It's, it's what a lot of people are wanting to talk about. So let's just be careful. So as I mentioned, I think that the trial, even though it's been set to start May 23rd, I think it is going to get postponed due to them not having defense attorneys assigned yet, and there being so much discovery that they're going to have to sift through and get straight. So as we learn when that trial date actually is, we will learn. Nashville Buckeye, since there's a gag order, how much more will we actually find out before the trial? Drips and drabs. It won't be a ton of concrete. We may get an arrest affidavit, maybe. Usually when we get that, it's because it's leaked, or if it's somebody who, I guess it's somebody who has it and will leak it. So it all depends. But because they have the motion for the gag next week, chances are it'll pass, obviously, and everything's going to be fine. And they're going to hold everything close to the vest with that because they don't want to jeopardize the investigation. But when the trial does start, I'm going to see if I can get my ass in that courtroom, and I will give you guys updates as they come through in real time, because it's, about a 2-hour drive from here. Well worth the drive to see those monsters in person and make sure that they're held accountable. Okay, guys, so I'm going to come on here and I'll update you again when we have more information. I appreciate you bearing with me as we work through some of these tech issues, and as I get everything else, you can kind of see it behind me up and running. Again, if you're new to the channel and you enjoyed the video and you want to follow along in this case coverage and other cases, make sure you hit subscribe, turn your notification bell to on, and We will talk very soon, guys. So until the next case, please stay safe and please, please hold all of your babies and your loved ones close. All right, we'll talk soon. Bye, guys.